Welcome into WagerTalk TV. We are talking Texas A&M at Alabama. This video brought to you by Touchdown Alabama. I'm joined by Ralph Michaels and Dave Koken from WagerTalk.com. I am Drew Martin. Dave, coming to you first. We got Texas A&M in Tuscaloosa taking on the Alabama Crimson Tide, who are laying 17 at home, total of 52. How would you look to bet this one, Dave?
I probably won't look to bet this one. Game grade for last week, I make Alabama 19 points better than A&M. My power ratings have it lower than that, have it 14.5. So I'm surrounding the number as far as that goes. I don't think A&M. Let's just say that they kept their offense under wraps last week. I think they went into that game with the attitude that, well, it's Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt's terrible. And I don't think they game planned in particular for Vanderbilt. With Alabama on their schedule. So even though I didn't give them much of a grade last week because they didn't deserve one, it's not like I'm really downgrading the Aggies and saying, well, they might not be as good as everybody thought because they had a flat game against Vanderbilt. And they did manage to escape that game. Alabama looks like they're going to be one of the best teams in the country again. That's no surprise whatsoever. Revenge factor here on the A&M side. They lost to Bama last year. I think it was 47-28. Did a few decent things in that game, but the Crimson Tide was superior. I don't see a bet in this game. To me, we don't really know what A&M's got so far because, again, they really showed nothing last week, and I think showing nothing was somewhat by design. And Alabama looks like they're a top 5 team, but you're always paying for it in the price with Alabama. If I were going to do anything in this game, I suppose I'd look at Alabama first half because Saban's always got his teams ready to go in the first quarter. And that might be a slight edge, but again, not one I'm going to take a stance on.
And Ralph, I'll tell you, it's a fascinating matchup here in the SEC West. Like Dave just talked about, Alabama, obviously one of the best teams in the country with arguably, the best head coach in college football history here. But one thing about Nick Saban, he's not always interested in covering big spreads here. How much do you think that factors in? And are you looking to have a bet in the Texas A&M Alabama game?
Well, Drew, you, Rob, and I talked about this game earlier today. They go on the road. The Crimson Tide play Lane Kiffin in Mississippi in their next game. Dave, I rarely disagree with you in college football. I'm going to disagree a little bit. I think A&M is really struggling because of the opt-outs on the wide receiver side. Kellen Mond only 6.8 yards per attempt. They lost their most dynamic receiver. They lost their next couple guys that opted out. They're a little bit of a situation where the players that stayed have called out the players that have opted out. I think they're really going to struggle to find the deep pass. I completely agree with you with the first half. We saw Alabama come out dominate. I think Nick Saban uses a lot of guys. You don't want to let your guys get worn out with a 10-game schedule. When you break down Alabama in conference play since the start of the 2015 season, their average win is by 22.3 points per game. But in the first and second quarters, they have an edge, 21.9 points scored, only 8.8 points allowed. So the defense plays up to that top level. A&M starting slow. Alabama first half may actually make my card this week, laying under 10 points in that situation.
Well, I would go with it from that standpoint, and I do agree on that standpoint. The reason I'd be leery on full game is, look, I'm just convinced that we don't know about A&M yet. I agree with the losses they had. No question there's some downgrade there. But there is no question in my mind that they've spent all of their practice sessions so far, all of them, on this game. And last week it was, let's go out there and scrimmage against an awful football team. So I can't really downgrade them off that performance last week because I don't think they intended to show anything going in. They wanted to keep everything under wraps. And, well, I guess you could say they succeeded from that standpoint. But, look, Alabama's not a team I like going against, period, because basically you're going to have to hang the number. You're not going to beat them outright. And when I'm taking a dog, it's not really with the intent of just covering the spread. I like taking dogs I think have a chance to win the game. I can't say I've got much of a belief the Aggies can pull an upset here. So I guess if we're going to have a consensus here, it'd be Alabama first half.
All right, there's consensus. Alabama first half from Dave Koken, Ralph Michaels. I am Drew Martin. And guys, remember this video brought to you by Touchdown Alabama, 3:30 Eastern kick here on CBS is where you can catch this one. Also remember, $2 Tuesday, both Sports Memo and WagerTalk.com. Top handicappers, top play at both websites, discounted to just $2 on Tuesday. Sports Memo and WagerTalk.com.